The Great Steppe, millenniums of events, hundreds of nomadic tribes and people. They lived, worked, made discoveries, conquered large tracts of lands, and left us some mysteries. To learn more about it, watch the project called Enigma of the Great Steppe. On today's program, Pearl from Tianxia. Foreman or architect? Man's genius or God's plan? We are ready to go to the end of the world to see miracles. We admire the Eiffel Tower in France or the Leaning Tower of Pisa in Italy. We look at the frescoes of the great Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael with excitement. We have no enthusiasm for the unique masterpieces located in our cities and villages. We do not notice their beauty and do not think about the fact who, when, and how created the certain architectural masterpiece. Buildings, which we tell about in our today's release, are truly man-made shrines. They were built many centuries ago and are still alive with many secrets. For example, how can bats save a temple? Why do birds never land on the sacred poplar? How was Stalin involved in the history of the Holy Ascension Cathedral? Where did the multi-tone bell disappear? Why is the color of the Zharkent mosque still bright? The life of their creators also keeps some mysteries. Why did one architect work free of charge? And some still believe the second architect was a foreman, not an architect at all. The outer beauty and mental strength have intertwined in the buildings and destinies of people in a bizarre way. It was the last decades of the 19th century. The Silk Road has already lost its former significance, but trade continued to flourish in Simirece region. And in 1882, one of the settlements bordering on China, Zharkent became the city. Business of merchants and entrepreneurs in Zharkent were successful in those days. A brewery, then a tobacco factory was built here. It was a rich region and its soil was fertile. Once the Russian general Pyotr Kalitin joked, if you stick a polished cane with a copper tip into the soil of Simirece and water it, the next day you will see the leaves on this cane. And people also did not forget about spirituality. In March 1886, hundreds of people of different nationalities, estates, and religions gathered for the Kurultai, the council. They discussed a very serious issue. We live in the East and there is no mosque in our region. We needed a holy place where people could come and praise Allah. And locals wanted to build a mosque. Soon the elders and administration of that village learned about this wish. It was decided to build the mosque in the center of Zharkent. The only thing was to find a person who would agree to host and become a sponsor. The authorities offered this to the merchant of the first guild, Joly Akhun Yuldashev. He was well-educated, wealthy, and knew how to manage people. Taranchinian people of Simirece region used to call Uyghurs like this. Joly Akhun was strong-willed, calculated, brave enough, and could cope with his project. But despite his dignities, this man had sinned in the past. Here he is sitting with brocade hat with fur and clothes decorated with medals and stars. His relatives and friends are standing at his sides. The mullah who came from Mecca is coming to him. Yuldashev is sitting and waiting while the mullah comes closer, and only after that he's getting up to greet the guest. You see typical Tsar with ruler mentality. Perhaps making a holy thing, Joly Akhun wanted to get the opportunity to pray for forgiveness for his cruelty and ruthlessness. It is believed that the idea to build the mosque without a single nail belongs to him. According to his ambitions, the mosque was to become a unique and unusual building. And when they began to look for an architect in Shanghai, it turned out that Huang Pok was the main architect of Shanghai. After the decision to build the mosque, the second Kurultai was convened. Then the messengers went to China and brought the architect Huang Pok. Yes, locals of Zharkent could afford to invite a talented foreign architect. They collected a huge amount of money for those times, 10,000 rubles in gold for the construction of the mosque. In many sources, it is noted that Han Pik, according to other sources, Huang Pok, not only accepted Joly Ildashev's offer, but also agreed to work for free. It is believed that once Don Phi, master's nickname, dreamed of building a Muslim mosque in the Chinese style in his homeland, but local authorities did not allow it. Well, he managed to realize his plan on the territory of the Great Steppe. However, the writer Islam Gali Urkimbai Uli mentions that Han Pik took money even for straightening of one of the leaning columns. So, was this Chinese architect unselfish? Who can reply to this question? They decided to build the mosque of wood and bricks. They used pine trees, which were brought from the highest peaks of the Trans-Ili Alatau Mountains. Do you see this? All pine trees were brought from one place. If you ask why they chose the yellow pine tree, the answer is that it is very strong wood. It is of good quality and has only a few branches. All trees were of the same size. Tree trunks were transported by the Ili River for a distance of about 150 kilometers. 75 best carpenters processed the Tian Shan spruce. After thorough drying, they prepared the details. The framework of the building consists of 122 wooden pillars connected by a system of beams and nozzles. Physicists invented ways to raise wooden pillars using the laws of physics. And how were trees cut? Those days, there were no special places for wood cutting. People dug a certain area. Two men were on top and bottom, and they cut with a handsaw. Locals of the city and village altogether mashed the clay for the foundation of the building till it became as hard as stone. The brick was brought from another town. There was pure sand in Kapshigai. 100 people went there. They formed bricks of clay, fired them, and brought these bricks here. People carried out everything manually as there was no equipment at that time. It is interesting that the mosque was built by a multinational team, but there were no problems with understanding among this team. Several translators labored alongside the workers. The construction was completed in record time. And in 1892, according to other sources, in 1886, the doors of the light building were open for the faithful. Friday prayers and various religious ceremonies were held in the mosque. Ceremonies like Tusal Kisir, At Koyu, Nikeh Kiyu, etc. The mosque is an incredibly beautiful building. Han Pik used the traditional style of building of Central Asia. The mosque has a luxurious central arch, corner towers which simulate minarets, dome ceilings, and carved touches with inscription. The roof is like hanging in the sky and resembles Chinese pagodas. Its design is unusual. It is assembled from special beams and brackets, do and gun, which allow curving cornices. This entire magnificence has not a single nail. Do you see that there are no nails in the wood, and that's proof? This is a structure which was built without nails. The building has one more feature. During its construction, Han Pik did not use drawings at all, and this was genius. The unusual mixture of styles used in this building is brilliant. According to the legend, when the master returned to his homeland, he was executed for disclosure of secrets. But no one knows what kind of secrets. Despite such destiny of the architect from Tianxia, the pearl of his art is left on the territory of the Great Steppe. After the construction of the building finished, the locals of the city were fascinated with its beauty. The 22-meter building became the center of enlightenment. These are the eastern gates, madrasa for orphan girls and madrasa for orphan boys. Everybody knows what madrasa is. It is a place for lessons. It is a place where religious literacy is taught. Along with the names of Han Pik and Wali Akhun Yuldashev, the names of Hasan Imanov, Tahir Ismailov, Nasruddin Kari, Abdul Qadir, Ushurbak, Zainuddin, and many other masters' names will remain forever in the memory of people. None of them knew that hard times were coming. Nine years after the construction of the building, there was a strong earthquake in this region. Many buildings in the city were ruined. The creation of Han Pik survived the earthquake, although it has been seriously damaged. Both decorative towers collapsed and the domes were damaged. The shrine survived. It also survived the terrible hurricane of 1965. The Chinese say the walls can be ruined, but the roof, never. So the Zharkent mosque survived. It also survived the worst disaster, the years of total atheism. The Communist Party came to power and stated that there is no religion, there is no God, and there is no Quran. They dug up, burned, destroyed all books of the Quran, and persecuted all mullahs. And then the mosque became unnecessary. The mosque was used as a warehouse, then as a granary. Later, the border guards lived here and admired the Arabic script. The rooms became darker, the colors started fading, and only a huge poplar continued to grow in the yard as it used to. It was planted the same year when the mosque was built. It is already 150 years old. If the winter is mild, the tree does not lose its leaves, so it remains green. And if the winter is cold and snowy, then its leaves fall and buds appear again at springtime. It is believed that if a person touches its trunk, then his or her true wish will come true. But the birds never land on its branches. Maybe they feel a special power. The revival of the shrine began in the 70s of the last century, and again people faced strangeness. It turned out that hundreds of bats were living under the ceiling. And these small species were feeding on bark beetles, and as a result the vaults of the mosque remain almost undamaged. This is the link between heaven and earth. Once coming close to the temple, Tokhtar Bakirov said, "I feel the energy of the space here." And this might be true, as Tokhtar, he had been in space. He is the first Kazakh cosmonaut. Another monument of wooden architecture also managed to withstand terrible blows of nature and decades of atheism. It is the Ascension Cathedral. This architectural masterpiece, located in Almaty, is also full of legends. Its history is full of contradictions, inconsistencies, and controversial statements. And here we should note that plan and construction of this cathedral lasted more than half a century. This question has been handled for over 40 years. The foundation of the cathedral was laid at the Kolpolsky Avenue. It is the current Dostik Avenue, but the project did not move further. Initially, the projects of the cathedral were presented by the architects Sergei Troparevsky and Konstantin Borissoglebsky. Meanwhile, the architects, bishops, and authorities were discussing these projects. Verny, the former name of Almaty, turned into ruins in the result of the earthquakes of 1887. After these events, it was planned to move the city itself to another place, but Andrei Zenkov told, "It was built wrong initially, and that's why the city was ruined. We will build it properly, and the building will stand a century. No earthquake will damage it. I have deep faith in the success of the future, and I'm not afraid for our city." Zinkov wrote in the Semirechsky Regional News, "I believe that our city will be full of solid, high-rise buildings constructed of stone, concrete, and other materials." All is said and done. In 1903, the Holy Synod approved the project provided by Boris Soglebsky, and Andrei Zinkov was appointed as superintendent of the project. People say that Andrei's father, Pavel Zinkov, who was the mayor at that time, played a big role here, and time has proven that this was good for the cathedral's future. Zinkov promised to change the layout of the bell tower from an octagon to a square one, because high-rise buildings with square layouts are more earthquake-resistant. Zinkov insisted on stitching all drums of the domes with metal rods. So the ceremony of putting foundation of the temple was held on the 26th of September 1903 in the Pushkin Park. Now it is the park of the 28 Panfilov Guardsmen. But while designing drawings, they did not take location of the cathedral into account. It was a very beautiful building on the drawings. In fact, it was not suitable for the seismically dangerous foothills of the Trans-Ili Alatau. It was almost an impossible task to build a beautiful construction without using stone and brick. And here Zinkov offered great things. He decided to raise the main bell tower 9 meters higher, and the temple became majestic. He made the cathedral the way we see it now. He made it unique. And he was an engineer. He made his own adjustments in the technical part of the project, an outer appearance of the building, in architecture. Initially, the dome had to be different. It was supposed to have a tent structure. But here we see the drum structure. It is like wooden Baroque style. Architects Natalia and Timur Turikulovs emphasized that at that time this building was considered super modern on the territory of Central Asia. The best materials all over the world were used for the construction of the cathedral. Metlach tiles were brought from the St. Petersburg factory. The cement was transported from Tashkent, because at that time, cement-producing factories were only in Tashkent. Some believe that the tiles were brought from Germany. Actually, it doesn't matter where they were brought from, the tiles withstood the test of time. In addition, a multi-layer cast of well-purified clay was used in the trench. Andrei Zinkov calculated the base settling of the building with centimeter-level accuracy. Concrete and reinforced concrete structures were the know-how of that time. Many engineers, including Paul Gourdet, highly criticized this concrete construction. But nevertheless, Zinkov insisted to build it in this way. 250 trunks of Tian Shan spruce were the main element of the construction. Although Paul Gourdet, Zinkov's colleague and competitor, wrote, "It is known that the local spruce, which is the only kind suitable to use for construction, has bad quality. It is porous and becomes damp very fast." And again, Zinkov has broken the rules and won. He made a unique ventilation system, and the wood withstood the test of time. And here we should mention the catchphrase, "The cathedral was built without using a single nail." Of course, it is an exaggeration. According to the construction estimate, over 2.8 tons of iron items, including fastenings, were used. Most probably, people wanted to convey the unusual design with this phrase. Thanks to this design, the cathedral was not ruined. Nails were used, but maybe they were of unusual type, because the whole design was unusual. The foundation, staples, overlapping, everything was unusual. But most probably another thing has more significance for visitors of the temple. Zinkov built the temple in the same way as he used to do during many years. White high walls, white vaults of the dome, in the slits of which one could see the wonderful sky above Alma-Ata, blue and pink icons that look like paintings. And these icons were not drawn by monks, but by the art teacher Ludov, who was a great decorator like the builder Zharkent himself. In August 1907, at the solemn consecration of the cathedral, Bishop Dmitry of Turkestan called it one of the greatest wooden churches. There's another legend about this cathedral. It is believed that once upon a time, God's man lived near Verny. His name was Ilya. He could predict the future, and locals decided to visit him before starting construction. Having learned that the cathedral was going to be constructed in Pushkin Park, Ilya said, "Start construction of the cathedral, but remember that it will serve both God and Satan." His words came true very soon. After 3 years, the building survived an earthquake of 10 magnitude. In the notes about the damage after the earthquake, it is mentioned that about 150 windows were broken. Plaster fell down and the cross of the bell tower was bent at the bottom. Nothing was ruined inside the cathedral. Despite its height, the cathedral was a very flexible construction. The bell tower could swing and bend like a treetop. The amount of damage is 400 rubles. People say that Andrei Pavlovich Zharkent came to the cathedral that night and was happy to see that his work was not ruined. He laughed and cried, "Hooray, it is victory. Guys, hooray." Someone remarked with regret, "Today many people became unfortunate, and here another one has gone crazy. Poor fellow." This truly was a victory and not the last one. Zharkent guarded his work for the rest of his life. Soon the revolution started. They started to build the new world over the ruins of the old one, and the church was outlawed.
Когда снимали колокола, когда пытались снять кресты, тот человек,
When one man tried to take the cross, he died.
он погиб при этом деле. Люди пытались
People
попасть.
tried to trample, humiliate, and destroy the temple. That was impossible.
Недозволительно.
The cross was taken down and the bell was thrown off. No one knows where the main bell has disappeared. Maybe it was melted in Tashkent or buried somewhere along the Kulzhinsky path. In short, it faded into obscurity. But the temple continued to work. Why? And how does it relate to the leader of the people? The fact is that Bishop Dmitry Abashidze was a rector of the theological seminary where young Yosif Jugashvili Stalin studied. Perhaps it was a kind of gratitude, or maybe Andrei Zharkent had real authority among the Bolsheviks. In 1927, the Museum of Religion and Atheism History, and in a cruel twist of fate, the center of the local Society of Atheists, was opened in the cathedral. The figures of Lenin and Stalin were on the entrance. The Central Museum of the Republic was located here from 1931 to 1985.
Вообще собору повезло.
In general, the cathedral was, let's say, a lucky building because Zharkent himself designed even the interior decoration.
Задумано Зharkent. То есть он
He
перепланировал.
turned this temple to a museum.
Он был еще жив.
He was alive when the temple was changed to a museum.
В общем-то, счастье наше.
We're happy that the creator of the temple turned it to a museum himself.
Вот музей.
The radio station has been broadcasting music and news for many years from the bell tower. Later, concert and exhibition hall was equipped in the cathedral. Fortunately, they did not equip vegetable handling enterprise, a bathhouse or club. In 1995, by the decision of our president, Nursultan Nazarbayev, the Ascension Cathedral was handed over to the Russian Orthodox Church in perpetuity. Today, Natalia and Timur Terekulovs are working on the next transformation of wooden architecture masterpiece. In 2004, they were awarded the UNESCO Prize for the restoration of the Ascension Cathedral. This is a brief history of only 2 architectural monuments that withstood a force of nature and survived the years of atheism. And there are other beautiful monuments like mausoleums of Hoja Ahmed Yassawi and Aristan Bab, Aisha Bibi and her babysitter Babaja Khatun, and dozens of others. Different religions were spread over the Great Steppe. The Great Steppe protects a lot of temples, the Great Steppe, and a higher power.